This morning, the Supreme Court recognized that the Constitution guarantees marriage equality, that all people should be treated equally, regardless of who they are or who they love.
The United States Supreme Court decision on June 26, 2015 in the case of Obergefell v. Hodges instantly gave millions of Americans the right to marry the person they loved. Just as in December of 1973, when the American Psychiatric Association removed 81 words from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders and instantly cured millions of people of a disease they never had. These historical moments were the results of years of endless encounters, exploration of theories, and exchanging of old ideas and values for new, more accurate, and humane ones.
That act today has ensured that LGBT people are not discriminated against. From marriage equality to workplace protections, the APA took leadership in this country in ensuring that the discrimination did not continue.
The second half of the 20th century ushered in a new tide of activism. The civil rights movement, second-wave feminism, and anti-war protests gained momentum, and the gay and lesbian community saw an encouraging time to fight for their own human rights. Historically, homosexuality was often criminalized, perceived as deviant, and many gays and lesbians were forced to live closeted, inauthentic lives. In the late 19th century and into the 20th, people began identifying as homosexuals. Though homosexuality had always existed, suddenly society saw the homosexual lifestyle as a threat, something to create laws around and turn into a disease. By World War II, general society had come to view homosexuality as a scientifically proven mental disorder.
The DSM stands for Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's a publication of the American Psychiatric Association, and it's kind of the Bible of psychiatry. I came up with a definition in 1973 that made it possible to argue that homosexuality was not a mental disorder.
We discovered that Americans consider homosexuality more harmful to society than adultery, abortion, or prostitution.
They can be anywhere. They can be judges, lawyers. We ought to know we've arrested all of them. So if any one of you have let yourself become involved with an adult homosexual or with another boy, and you're doing this on a regular basis, you better stop quick.
Many psychiatrists and psychologists viewed their gay patients through a diagnosis and practiced techniques such as conversion therapy and electric shock therapy to cure their patients of homosexuality.
I was in junior high and high school and just having an inkling that maybe I was different, that I was lesbian. There were like no materials available to find out more about this. It was almost impossible to find anything in the library. The only things you could find were books that talked about being gay or lesbian as some kind of disorder. And so was very real to me then.
What they were saying was homosexuality is a mental disease. Homosexuality is a pervasive emotional disorder. It is psychopathological. Now, what makes it psychopathological? In their view, what makes it psychopathological is that two people of the same sex love each other.
In the 1950s, after talking with a young gay student, psychologist Dr. Evelyn Hooker saw no signs of psychological deviance and questioned the research supporting claims that homosexuality was a mental disorder.
You had a transorbital lobotomy on August 1st. You know what day it is today?
It's August 9th.
That's right. Why did you have that operation, do you know?
I think it was something to do with my sexual intercourse.
Was that seriously in error?
Well, I thought it was anyhow.
In all previous studies about homosexuality, the subjects were already institutionalized, being treated for other mental disorders. Recognizing this bias, Dr. Hooker gathered a group of 60 college-aged men who were not currently in mental health counseling. Half her male subjects self-identified as strictly heterosexual, while the other half identified as strictly homosexual. She measured the psychological state of each subject using 3 common tests. She sent the results to fellow researchers and asked them to determine the sexual orientation of each subject. Dr. Hooker's explorations were published in 1967 as The Adjustment of the Male Overt Homosexual, and the study concluded that there was no determinable difference between the psychological adjustment of homosexual and heterosexual men. The study encouraged others to attempt to replicate Dr. Hooker's results in research of their own. In 1972, fueled by recent scientific support, a team of activists including lesbian Barbara Giddings and homosexual psychiatrist Dr. John Fryer decided to confront the American Psychiatric Association on the subject of homosexuality and psychiatry. On May 2, 1972, Dr. John Fryer was introduced to the APA as Dr. H. Anonymous. He wore an oversized suit, a modified Nixon mask, and spoke with a voice-altering microphone, rendering him unrecognizable to even his closest friends. He described the personal discrimination he had experienced as a homosexual psychiatrist, the dangers of homophobia, and the necessity for an exchange in the pathology surrounding homosexuality. On the panel next to him sat Barbara Giddings, Frank Camney, and 2 other psychiatrists who argued homosexuality was not abnormal or unhealthy. His speech received a standing ovation. The conversation about the removal of homosexuality from the DSM had begun. However, criticism soon appeared. Dr. Irving Bieber and Dr. Charles Socarides, 2 advocates for conversion therapy, the belief that homosexuality is a disease to be cured, mounted a vigorous campaign to ensure that homosexuality would remain a psychiatric disease.
Homosexuality is in fact a mental illness which has reached epidemiological proportions.
Socarides and Bieber's arguments were fueled by previous scientific research and feelings that gay activism threatened psychiatrists' reputations. In voting against a change in diagnosis, they cited their beliefs in the psychoanalytic method and that they were doing God's work. As the debate grew more heated, Dr. Robert Spitzer, a member of the APA's Committee on Nomenclature, the committee responsible for the verbiage of the DSM, found himself facing a huge decision. Throughout 1972, Spitzer remained only loosely aware of the debate on the nature of homosexuality. But after encountering Ron Gold, a gay advocate, at an APA convention in New York, he began to reconsider his perspectives. In 1973, after months of research and debate, Spitzer and the APA Nomenclature Committee removed the 81 words that defined homosexuality as a mental disorder from the DSM. The new diagnosis of homosexuality explained how it held no pathology as long as the patient was okay with his or her identity. The exchange of these 81 words instantly cured thousands of gay and lesbian people of a disease many of them already believed they did not have. However, as history and human nature show, this exchange did not suddenly eliminate homophobia in America.
People are still nervous. You know, I will say that in the research site where I am right now, that people are nervous about queer stuff and kids.
Despite controversy and discrimination that continues today, the exchange of societal perspectives on homosexuality have led to increased rights for LGBT people. Today, gay people hold greater job security, LGBT families are more accepted, and the Supreme Court ruled bans on marriage equality unconstitutional.
So what happened with the nomenclature change really is that it was the confluence of the beginnings of positive attitudes towards LGBT people promoted by community activism, political activism within the LGBT community, and things were just beginning to change. And then you couple that with some people who were doing good science around that. And so it was a confluence of research and cultural change that allowed that to happen. And it would not have happened without the confluence of both of those things. We owe as much to lesbian and gay activists as we owe to the people in APA who did the scientific work and the people in APA who did the political work to make the change. We owe as much to the social activists of the time.
The removal of the 81 words was not an ending, but a beginning symbolic of shifting ideas. The combined explorations of old ideas, encounters between individual people, and a willingness to exchange old ways for new led to an instant cure of a disease that did not exist, and paved the way to greater societal acceptance of the gay community.
I'm so glad that this is the response that the community has instead of just rage, that we're all coming together today and feeling empathy.